This week, the book I read is called The Song of Copper Creek by Kristen McKendry. And I loved this book so much that I read it all in one day. And this story is about a woman named Grace who was a music teacher, and she taught adults how to sing, and they would have performances. And one night she was in Park City having a rehearsal for one of her performances, and while she was there, her husband and her 3 kids went out to go to dinner, and they were getting on the freeway, and a semi rammed into them, and 2 of them died on scene, and 2 of them died later at the hospital. And 18 months later, Grace was still having a very hard time with losing all of her family. And Grace had lived in a little town in Canada up until she was 12 years old. Then her parents moved to Utah, and she was looking for some place to go, and she found a farm in this little town that she grew up in. And this farm did things the old-fashioned way. In this little area, there was a museum depicting pioneer life, and there were cabins, and this old couple had a farm, and they farmed organically, and they would have people come, and in exchange for food and board, they would get to learn how to run the farm and how to plant and harvest. And she thought this was a good idea to just get away from Utah and her memories. And she made sure that she picked an older couple who didn't have any children, so that she would not be reminded of what she no longer had. And so she traveled up to Canada, and she arrived at the farm, and much to her surprise, the older couple had 2 grandchildren, a girl and a boy, who were living with them, while their father was a lawyer in a bigger city, and their mother had gone away. And Grace was very upset to learn that there were these 2 children there. She had a hard time being around these children and seeing them, because they reminded her, made her think of her children. And since the accident happened, Grace was never able to sing since the accident, even though it was her passion in life. And while Grace is at this farm, she starts to heal herself. And Grace is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and she looks up where the church house is and when their meetings are. And she's worried because since she grew up in this town until she was 12, she was afraid that somebody would recognize her and that they would ask about her life, and she just couldn't bear to tell people what had happened to her husband and children. But as she continued to go to church, she found a couple of good friends that helped her and that she had fun with. And eventually she ended up telling people one by one what had happened to her. And she starts to become close to the two children and to care about them. And by the end of the book, she has healed enough that she goes to a ward program and she is able to sing again. And I really enjoyed reading this book. It was heartbreaking for Grace, and it was nice to see somebody who's grieving so much be able to heal a little bit over time and to find some joy and happiness in her life again, and to be able to find new direction for her life. And again, this book is called The Song of Copper Creek by Kristen McKendry, and I highly recommend reading this book.